All right. And we have a very special guest this week. We have Adam White, who is the Director of Communications for Ski Vermont. Adam, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It's my pleasure.
So last time we actually chatted in person was back at Sugarbush. It was December of 2019. The world was a much simpler place. We were all excited for the 2019-2020 ski season, which was going to be memorable. But we had no idea in what way it was going to be memorable. So here we are now. Whole different world. Can you give us a little rundown about what you do for Ski Vermont before we get started?
Can we spend 1 second, though, and talk about how great that day at Sugarbush was and how amazing the snow was and how much fun you and I had skiing on it? Because honestly, man, that's what's carrying me forward right now is the memory of how good that feels and how good that's going to feel again. So let's take a moment and visualize being on that mountain together and how great that was, right?
That was a ton of fun. And another comment, you probably don't know this, but my wife actually gave birth to a beautiful baby girl almost 9 months exactly from that day. So you have no idea how much fun we had at Sugarbush.
Oh, good skiing will do that, man. Good skiing will do that. So
I hope it's not John Egan's. I'm just saying that. I mean, she was blown away by him. So
yeah, well, you'll be able to tell soon enough whether or not your kid is John Egan's. But yeah,
if she skis really well, right?
I'm going to try to take credit for it. Either way,
Brian's a pretty good skier, so I don't know.
He's an amazing skier. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it was a great day, and I have a great job. I'm very, very fortunate to have this position. I am the Director of Communications for the Vermont Ski Areas Association, better known as Ski Vermont. That's kind of our trade name, and we represent 20 alpine ski areas and 29 cross-country ski areas here in Vermont. We do a lot of lobbying. We're the lobbying arm for the industry, so we spend a lot of time at the State House lobbying on behalf of the industry. But also, my job is to do a lot of public relations and media relations and public affairs work on behalf of the industry. So what's really cool about it, I used to be in journalism. I was a newspaper writer, and I was a ski writer, and I thought that was my dream job. And I always kind of thought how cool it would be to work in the industry. And when you have those thoughts, you always think, oh, I want to work at my favorite ski area or what have you. And for me to be in this position where I represent all of the ski areas in my favorite state in which to ski, it's really a dream come true. And I pinch myself constantly saying, I can't believe I got this job.
That's nice.
That's a pretty epic, thing. And it's great hearing people who actually love their job, because I know most people tend to, Mario and I both have full-time gigs that we would definitely not say is quite dream-worthy, but it's inspiring seeing people who've gotten to that point where they are in love with their job. Now, I know this year it's probably been a little trickier, your job, probably handling a lot more media requests, and we talked before the actual interview started about you being inundated now, because what are we talking about with the biggest change going on now in Vermont, COVID-19, ski season starting? What can people look forward to or look that's different from last season?
What's not different might be an easier conversation. I mean, first of all, I think it bears mentioning, every facet of life has been affected by the COVID pandemic, and I understand that. And my heart goes out to everyone who's been so deeply affected by this, all these different industries and all these different lines of work that have had such a hard time with COVID. I mean, I feel very fortunate that we've still been motoring along here, and we're heading into a season. There are a lot of jobs that have ground to a halt or dried up, and that's been really unfortunate. So that makes it hard sometimes for me to say boo-hoo, woe is us, when we're actually still moving forward here. We're just making the necessary adjustments that we have to make. As far as your question, I mean, we are doing everything we can at the ski area level to put the guidelines and the protocols in place to allow people to come and safely visit and enjoy themselves for us to have a season. I mean, the thing about this pandemic has been the ever-changing nature of it. It's been changing constantly all the time and requiring almost constant adaptation to those changes. And there have been plenty of times at which we've had to stop, and there's been nothing in front of us but question marks. And so the ski areas have been working tirelessly preparing for this season. We here at Ski Vermont have been working hand in glove with the state on a reopening plan with various state agencies to figure out the best way for us to reopen and to get our season off the ground. And we've come up with a reopening plan that was finally unveiled a couple of weeks ago that kind of lays out the blueprint for that. A lot of it is very straightforward and things that you see across all different facets of life nowadays. Masks, face coverings, constant hand washing, hand sanitizing, avoiding touching your face, really vigorous cleaning of contact surfaces, that kind of a thing. You're going to see some other things that you see in a lot of everyday life, like physical distancing. You'll see at ski areas there'll be any time possible to keep a 6 foot or physical distance. It'll be implemented in ways to do that. And then indoor capacities have been cut. It'll be 50% or 75 people, whichever is fewer. 50% of fire code capacity. You'll see that the lift lines will be spread out to incorporate that physical distancing, that kind of a thing. But one of the biggest and most significant changes, and this has been talked about a lot and has really become a super hot button topic in the last week or so, is the interstate travel regulations as they pertain to Vermont. It's been pretty widely publicized that Vermont has had probably the strictest interstate travel regulations in the country since the onset of the pandemic. We've been pretty consistently right there at the top of the list of people.
So what are they doing for that? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Throughout the summer and fall, there's been what we refer to as the heat map. It's a map on the government website, the state government website, that breaks it down by county, and it's based on infections per million, and it's color coded. And if your county was red or yellow, you had to adhere to a strict set of protocols for interstate travel. And it was basically you had to self-quarantine before coming to Vermont. And
so I'm in Florida, so I'm pretty screwed.
Well, looking at the map,
I'm not going to be allowed to come to Vermont, right?
Well, Mario, if you look at the map right now, I think there's 2 counties in the entire Northeast, from Maine down to Virginia, that are under 400 right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'll see your 2 counties and I'll raise you 0, because as of Monday, the map was completely thrown out. And the new rule is if you are out of state, you must self-quarantine before you come to Vermont. It's 2-week mandatory self-quarantine or 1 week followed by a negative result on a COVID test. So
you quarantine in your home state even, and then you can go?
Exactly.
So it's all honor system.
Yes and no. We're encouraging people to quarantine at home. I know a lot of people during this time period are working from home, are in a position where they could, with prior planning, say, we want to go to Vermont and go skiing at this date. So the week prior, I'm going to make arrangements, if I don't have them in place already, to work from home. If you can do that, that's the way to do it, whether 2 weeks or 1 week with a test. Now, you ask about, is it all based on the honor system? No, the new reopening plan includes attestation documentation that is required and is taken at the point of either lodging or at the point at which you check into the ski area to get your access activated, or whatever the system is that the ski area uses. So before you can participate in these sports and before you can check into a lodging facility, you must sign a form attesting that you have adhered to these travel regulations. And there has been talk of the state, having an enforcement policy or, some kind of a penalization policy for people who either, refuse to sign it or they sign it unlawfully.
Falsely.
Falsely, right? Yeah.
I didn't know if they were doing any contact management from phones or anything like that, because I never heard ideas about that. But
well, here's the thing: the technology and the implementation of technology across every ski area is really not consistent. Like, as you well know, you go to one ski area and it looks one way, and you go to another ski area and it looks another way. There is no one-size-fits-all solution for managing people electronically in that way. But you will see that. The ones that can do it, you're going to see RFID gates at the entrances to the ski lodge, so that it's the way that they can regulate not only how many people are in there, but who is in there at any given time, and it will help. Were there to be a situation in which they would need to do some contact tracing, it would help immensely to have that data. So you're going to see different, based on what a ski area does in terms of its procedures anyway, you're going to see different things enacted to try to regulate and to keep records and things like that, so that in the case of a situation in which there would need to be contact tracing, that could be accomplished.
Cool.
Wow. And is all of this being handed down from the state of Vermont, these requirements?
Yeah, everything that I have talked about is within the reopening plan as it was approved by the state of Vermont, yes.
Okay. And you said this is the latest version as of Monday, was it the 9th?
Yeah, I think it was last Monday, yeah. And it wasn't the 9th, it was last week.
The 2nd then?
Yeah.
Okay.
This Monday was when they got rid of the map. Because as you say, there were only 2 places. It was Northern Maine and one county in New York that you could still come to without quarantining. So at that point, it's like, what's the point?
Yeah, just right.
Well, it's easier now from a messaging perspective. It's much easier for us. Like, and that's the thing that's funny is we get all this media attention and they're like, oh my God, they threw out the map. And it's like, what did that really do? All that did
helping. Yeah.
It simplified our messaging so we can no longer have to say, check this map and see if you're from one of these 2 places. Instead, it's just like, these are the rules and this is what you have to adhere to. And quite honestly, guys, like, it's not impossible. It's a process that if you want to go skiing, you have to go through this process and you have to figure out a way to make this work. And then once you do, you unlock this experience that you well know is, I mean, it's worth it for sure.
Yeah.
So you just used to say, in order to go on a ski vacation, I need to book lodging. I need to get, my reservations that are necessary. I need to buy my lift tickets. I need to put my skis in the car, pack my bag, Now you just add, I also need to fulfill these requirements for quarantine. That's added to your list.
Well, like you mentioned, a lot of people are working from home. I'm home all day, so it's kind of like I'm quarantining for months now.
Right.
So it's
right. So instead of, maybe you make one trip to the grocery store a week. So instead you say, you know what, I'm going to make a big trip. I'm going to, drop the big bucks and I'm going to buy my groceries for the next two weeks or whatever ahead of time.
Get them delivered for a week, right?
Right. Or get them delivered. I'm going to, instead of going out to eat or even to go out and get takeout, we'll just have something delivered some point midweek. Like I'll do a Friday night happy hour Zoom with my buddies and, we'll all drink from our couches. And at the end of the week, I'll get my test and get my results and I'm going skiing. Like, to me, it's like, you do what you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the only people that, if you really look at it, that would be affected are people who are out-of-staters who maybe just come up for a weekend, go home, come back another weekend. That sort of travel is going to be pretty much forbidden, right?
Well, you're going to have to meet the quarantine regulations. So,
right.
Can you go through that process realistically for a weekend? Again, a lot of people would say, yeah, it's totally worth it. Especially if you're like Mario, you're working from home anyway, and it doesn't really require a ton of adjustments. You just have to be a little more careful with what you do, and
a little more vigilant.
Right, make a few more sacrifices. But again, you're making them for the good of being able to go on this trip.
Mm-hmm. And kind of taking it like way back to the beginning. Last season, when everything shut down, I think it was the second weekend in March. Were there any outbreaks in Vermont that were notable at that point, or was everything still kind of data still coming in and everyone sort of all over the place at that point?
Dude, I was at Alta.
Oh, were you?
I was skiing off the High Traverse at Alta on March 15th, and it was hammering. I'm like, tomorrow's going to be the best day of the year. That night, the entire ski industry shut down, with the exception of Powder Mountain stayed open for one more day. And I was calling the airline and being like, I got to get home to my family. Like, I know we're in the middle of like a plague or whatever, but I can't ski anymore, so I got no more reason to be out here.
Yeah.
When they started shutting stuff down, I was watching it the other day. It was like World War Z. Like, people were freaking out. Like, they're like, nobody's flying. Like, what's going on? I got to get to like home. Like, it was kind of chaotic,
Well, Salt Lake City, the airport was like, all these people were panicking, and it was kind of understandable because it was so sudden. And all these people in Salt Lake are not from there. They're just there to ski, and now they can't ski. So it's like, I need to get home.
I don't want to be in Utah. I can't ski.
I know what's going on, but they just shut down the skiing. Like something's going on. Like I got to
get
get
home. People like at the ticket counter. You know how hard this is. Like it's hard enough to get your seat changed on a flight. Like let alone like there's people at the ticket counter demanding like I have to get home to my family, and it's like you're saying World War Z. Like that's what I was thinking. Is like is this the beginning of something really crazy? So anyway, Brian, to get back to your question, like no, our shutdown here was really just a domino within the entire industry shutting down. Like it was not based on an outbreak here by any means. And so that was the nature of the beginning of this was, it's on. Like you saw it, and it wasn't just skiing. You saw all these other industries who were like immediately had the enactment of these regulations as a precautionary measure. And I think that's what it was in Vermont too.
Yeah. And that's, one of the things that at least kind of keeps me optimistic for this upcoming season is that we're outside. We already wear masks. If you're a weekend holiday person, that could be interesting. With the lines at some of the bigger resorts, but just the nature of skiing in general. Is most of the time you are relatively distanced. When you're out there, you're with the people you're usually with. I'm trying to stay optimistic about things. And just talking to you, it's really kind of validating that. It's really, like you said, you're doing the same things. It's really more of just planning ahead. And so you're not going to be able to, powder day, we're going to wing it and go up. That's kind of the one thing.
Yeah. We keep saying this. It's know before you go. Absolutely. Like, and you mentioned like, if you're a weekend holiday skier, it's important to know, and I didn't bring this up before, but some ski areas have pretty strict reservation systems in place now. And those like super normally, more popular days, those slots are going to get scoffed up. So the reality is you can't, you're absolutely right. There's no more like we're storm chasing, I just saw this thing on the Weather Channel, like throw the skis in the car, let's go. Like those old, like we've done.
Got to go to Maine for that.
Right. Yeah. This is not the season for that.
Yeah.
Well, even share houses, right? So, Brian and I used to do share houses at Mount Snow and Killington for years. And I guess, if you're going up for the weekend, if you want to go up 2-3 weekends in a row, you should be quarantining the entire time unless you're up at the mountain, right?
Or just stay there for 2 or 3 weeks.
I like that better.
That's the better move, right?
Right. And so this is another thing that we are encouraging, because this brings up another good point. Within your travel party, like if you travel in one vehicle together, like a lot of those rules don't necessarily apply anymore. Like there's lift loading limitations now that it's 50% of capacity or 6 feet of physical distance. So if you're in a gondola, you could theoretically sit kitty corner to one another and you'd achieve that 6 feet of physical distancing thing. But if you're in the same traveling party and you arrived in the same vehicle, that stuff goes out the window. Like you can then, ski together, ride together,
right?
Sit together at lunch. Like that's the way to do it. The days of the lone wolf, like I'm going to go chase a storm and knock off a few days skiing by myself. Like that's just not going to be nearly as realistic. It's going to cause a lot more considerations as far as the guidelines go. But if you can, strengthen numbers, get a few people together and go together, you can have a little more elasticity within those guidelines too. So that's good. And that's another thing that we're really encouraging for people.
And that's what you always look for. You're with a group and you're like, hey, let's all stay together. It's facilitating that,
It is.
You gotta look at the bright side of it.
You got to find people who have the skill level that they can keep up with you, which is Brian and my problem,
That's the rub, man. You get these people, I ski, man, I'm great. And they get out there and you're like, your boots are on the wrong feet. Like this is not going to be a good day.
Like,
I'll see it for.
They're like snow plowing and it's like, shit, you really sold me on this. Because we've seen it. Brian and I have seen it. There's people that are like, I'm awesome. And then they get on the mountain. You're like, what the hell? Like,
ski clubs. That's the best. Yeah.
Are they awesome, compared to like little kids, like skiing for the first time? Like, what's going on?
Well, the best is going up to Jackson Hole and they're like, dude, I'm totally doing Corbett's. I'm like, are you?
I want to see this.
I'll stay at the bottom and I'll watch you.
Yep.
And lo and behold, they never get there.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Of course, because it's funny in this position, like one of the things I hear quite often every winter is, I figured you would be a better skier.
Thanks, Dick.
Thanks a lot for the compliment.
I'm definitely fun over form. Like I'm one of those types of skiers. Like I love to go super fast and I can ski down anything, but you're not going to make a video and be like, look how graceful and beautiful this guy is. Like that's not what I do. So,
yeah, it's funny how like you get the range of people in the industry who go from they're doing backflips off of nothing just because they can to people who are like barely getting down the hill.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like you think everyone would be amazing and ready for jump into like a TGR movie, but not necessarily the case.
Honestly, man, skiing is like dancing. Like you see all these people and you're like, you have no idea what it would look like to watch them dance, right? And then the music comes on and they start dancing and you're like, oh my God.
Oh no. They're like Elaine and Seinfeld, right?
Like, oh my eyes.
Well, like last year I went skiing in Italy at the Club Med, and they do this thing where you get into these like guide ski groups, and you estimate your own level from like a 1 to a 6. So of course I go into like the 5. I'm like, the 6 was closed, it wasn't in backcountry, and I go into the 6, and of course all these people are like piling in there. I'm like, well, they all think they're good skiers. I guess they're all good skiers here. And what they do the first day is they're brutal about it. They will actually kick you out and go to another group. They're like, you go to that group, go over there. And they'll trade them. Like, you'll be skiing in the middle of the day. They'll be like, yeah, you need to go with this other person. Just flat out. They don't care. I'm like, that's how it should be.
The Italians, they don't care about your feelings.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Like, what a garbage.
That's right.
Right here too, though. We mentioned Sugarbush. It's funny. You go to Sugarbush, and if you are lucky, you're one of those people who's lucky enough, and you get to go out with Egan or Diggity, Daigle, or Matt Groom, or any of the bush pilots. Like those guys just know the mountain so well, and they'll just turn to you at the top and be like, "All right, just keep up," and they go. And it's like they're not looking at you, they're not watching you. They're just like, can this guy stay with me or not? And it's like the ultimate test, and it's fun, but it also can be really terrifying.
If you're with them at the end, then you can ski with them another run.
Exactly. If they're not waiting for you at the lift, so you got to at least keep them in sight.
You got 30 seconds from the time they stop till they go to the lift to arrive.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question for you, Adam, and I don't know if you have this number or if this data is even collected. Do you know what percentage of resort visits to Vermont come from out-of-staters?
It is a little more than 3/4.
A little more than 3/4. Okay.
Wow.
That's actually, I was guessing around 80%. So that's
80 is like the high water mark for that number.
Okay.
But it's somewhere between 75 and 80.
Yeah. And my thing was I have kind of a financial mind based on my previous work experience. And that was always something that I was always concerned about with the resorts, with last season, everything being cut short. How are the resorts doing in general financially? And is the state considering their financial health when they're making these decisions regarding the restrictions?
That's tricky. I mean, I think the restriction decisions are made based on what is best for the public welfare and health, period. Is there consideration of the fact of how big our industry is and how much of a part of the economy it is? Yes, absolutely, as well. But you don't play with human life and human welfare. So, there's certain things you can't put a price on, I guess is the short answer there. The state we've worked very closely with the state, and there has been a lot of discussion and a lot of consideration about the impacts that some of these regulations would have on the ski area or on the ski industry, excuse me. But again, it all comes from the perspective of what do we need to do to ensure the safety and health of the people who live in Vermont? Because let's be honest, our healthcare infrastructure here is limited. It's one of the things about having a state that's mostly rural and does not, have a tremendously high population. So an outbreak here would be a little more difficult to handle than an outbreak in a place that has more significant healthcare infrastructure. So that's something that you've got to think about. Another thing that people don't necessarily think about with this topic is a ski area has a lot of employees who are essential, who are not necessarily immediately replaceable due to things like certification. Like if your head of lift maintenance were to get sick and be out for an extended period of time, there is not a next man up situation there, because that position requires a certain level of certification and training that you can't just immediately replace. And so in all honesty, and this sounds very stark to say this, but like it wouldn't take much to take down a ski area with certain people getting sick. And so that has to also
can't run, right?
Right, exactly.
There's certain people that need to be there. Yeah, like you said, can't be replaced.
Right, you just can't do it. So we have to do what's necessary to protect the staff at the ski area as well. So that's another consideration in the health and welfare question. What kind of an impact is it going to have? You ask, how are they doing? That's, again, a very complicated, multifaceted situation. But I can tell you this. Preseason pass sales way up. I think the Epic pass sales were up 18%. I think I'm pretty sure that was the number there. Mad River Glen had to cut short its season pass sales the earliest they've ever had to do it because they had reached a threshold that they thought was comfortable. Magic Mountain, Jeff Hathaway reported a 75% increase in preseason season pass sales. So is the interest there? Absolutely. There's no question.
For sure.
And I think you hit the nail on the head before by saying, or Mario did, with saying you're outside. Everybody wants to get outside and exercise. You've seen it all summer and during the fall, in fact, with the pandemic. People are cooped up, they're stuck in their houses, working from home, whatever the situation may be. They want to get outside, they want to recreate in the fresh air, that kind of a thing. And because skiing checks so many boxes, there's, just huge amounts of acreage on which people can spread out and do this activity. It's open air. You can literally be outside the entire time if you can make it work. Logistically, you can boot up at the car, you can, eat your lunch at the car or on a bench somewhere or whatever. You can make it work, and still be able to do that. And so I think a lot of people are like, this is going to be my outlet. And God, do I need an outlet? Like, think about how mentally taxing this whole period has been on everybody, and I know you guys are right there with me on this. We need it. We need that mental headspace that skiing puts us in, like more than ever now. So, I'm excited. I'm super jazzed to go skiing this year. I mean, not that I'm ever not super jazzed, but you know what I mean? It's like there's this extra motivation almost. So
it's almost like we took it a tiny bit for granted, and now where it's like, whoa, like this is what we could be missing out on.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Look at like last March was great. It almost like wet the pump, about like all of a sudden skiing is taken away from us completely, and we're looking out at the mountains and there's still snow out there, and you're like, this would still be so good. Like, and yet we can't do it. And then,
I've talked about it many times in the podcast this summer. The weekend before everything shut down, I went to Magic on Friday and then Okemo on Saturday. And I had like the day at Magic, I got there at 10:30. I was booted up on the lift. I was by myself. I went from 11 to 4. I stopped once to go to the bathroom, and that was it. And it was one of the best days of my life. Like, it was so much fun. And I keep thinking about that day and be like, we're going to have this again. Like, we just got to be a little smarter. We got to plan ahead a little bit more, but this will happen.
You just got to get lucky. You got to plan ahead and go with your plan. And if it snows, it snows, right? It's going to be more appreciated, I think, than being able to jump in a car. You're like, hey man, I planned this. I quarantined. And I'm getting the benefit of it. It's going to be sweeter.
And you got to make it work. Again, it could be icy. It could be, a little rocky. But you know what? It's just, you're out there. And that's
going to be wonderful.
It's going to be wonderful.
So I have a question. The local towns, like one of the great things, if anybody hasn't been to Vermont that's listening to this, you got to get up there. I mean, it's the resorts
are great. After you quarantine, of course.
After you quarantine, the resorts are great. But one of the magical things about Vermont are the quaint little towns. So are the towns doing okay? The locals, like, the local shops, the local coffee shops, and the, little breweries that are up there and stuff, like, is that all still kind of going, or are you hearing rumblings of trouble?
Yeah, man, Vermont's getting by. Like, I think one of the nice things about Vermont is the scale on which things happen here is such that we can maybe endure things a little bit easier sometimes. Like, and that people don't necessarily immediately think about this, but when you're on a big scale, when you're in a place where there's a lot more people and your operation has to be much bigger, it takes more to keep it going. And it's almost easier to fail when you get bigger like that. When you're smaller and you got a lot less I's to dot and T's to cross, and you've managed to keep your operations streamlined, because that's kind of what you do in Vermont. You make it work and you do what you got to do and that kind of a thing. I think it's put us in a good situation in that regard. Now, I don't want to belittle the difficulties that the food service and lodging industries have had, because they are legit. Like, there's just no way around it. It's been very, very difficult. But at the same time, Vermonters are, it's almost like a cliche. They're resilient and hardy, and like they're really good at shifting gears. And like, it's one of the funny things that I talk about sometimes about skiing is, the weather is so fickle in New England. Like, we never know what kind of hand Mother Nature is going to deal us. And as a result, we in the industry have had to become pretty nimble and able to like adapt to, like the thaws that we were talking about earlier, or, these curveballs that we get thrown by Mother Nature. And so I think that's put us in a good position in some ways, because we're used to it. We're used to not necessarily knowing, what we're going to be up against and what kind of hand we're going to be dealt. But we're used to like making the best of it, sort of thing. And I think that's that's part of Vermont's DNA. It's sort of woven into the businesses here and the people here, is we're hardy, we're resilient. We do what we got to do to get by. And also, let's be honest. People have been like, "Oh, Vermont's so overly cautious. Like, you guys have such strict rules there. It's ridiculous." Like, look at the neighboring states. Look at New Hampshire by comparison. And now we're looking at this map and looking at infection rates and being like, were we really overcautious? Like, or was that kind of more so the mentality that more people should have had? And I don't want to really get into that. I don't want to do any finger wagging or whatever, but I'm pretty proud of the fact that we did what we did so far with the pandemic. And we're certainly not out of the woods yet, but we have done a lot to protect ourselves. And maybe some of it has come at the expense of some of these businesses or whatever, but it's put us in a better position than a lot of other places. And as someone who lives here, I'm pretty thankful for that.
Well, hopefully, maybe by like March, they'll have a vaccine you could put in the snow guns. People can ski down. Just open your mouth. You get some vaccination. You get some turns in.
You know how many skiers you will get if you do that? That would be amazing. Just go to
that there is no medical. We are not going to use snow guns to administer anything to the customer.
But it's an idea. That place would be packed.
Or perhaps maybe like the Alchemist can make some sort of version of Heady Topper with the with the immunization built with the hop mixture.
Yeah.
We're thinking outside the box here. We're trying to get everyone on the mountain.
You're certainly getting creative with it.
You get lines of people on the interstate just driving up to get their vaccines in Vermont.
As long as they quarantine.
We don't already have lines of people.
Yeah. Or the government would come over, take over Heady Topper then and be like, nope, we got to distribute this everywhere. No.
You're talking about a revolution then.
Right.
Don't take our beer. Don't take our Heady.
We've talked about it before too on the podcast. Like Mario and I, this was like 2015. We waited in line. We drove all over. Like the people have done the drive when Alchemist, when they were the smaller brewery before the big one opened up. People bouncing around, checking when the trucks were coming. We waited in line for an hour in was it Winooski? I think when they got their delivery on.
Yeah, I was just there.
Wednesday night, they were coming at 7:00. We were there at 6:00. Already the line's got 50 people in there already. And it's the best to see in like those like old school people who are just going to get their their jug of Carlo Rossi.
Yeah,
looking at you. Like
what are you waiting online?
This whole everywhere. Store is full of alcohol. Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember those days too. I've waited in line at the bevy many, many times. But the bigger one was Lawson's when Sean Lawson was just making beer in his garage or his shed or whatever. He opened his brewery, and they would literally release like just the bombers, the 22-ounce bottles, and he'd be like, the bevy's getting 10 cases or whatever, and then you walk up and there's 200 people in line. So it's like 3/4 of the people are not getting any beer whatsoever, but they're going to take the chance and they're going to wait it out just in case.
Hardcores.
The craft beer bubble, it's been amazing to watch it continue to grow in the state.
I can imagine. Well, yeah, going back to those days when it was Lawson's and Heady, they were like the forbidden fruit. Now I'm here in New Jersey. I can go to my local liquor store and get a sip of sunshine. No problem.
Damn shame.
But there's always another new brewery popping up. It's like, well, this is the next one. Like this guy, one guy back in his garage, he's making a case and.
But back then there weren't. Like those guys were really the pioneers in that particular style. Like I remember the first time I got a can of Heady Topper at the farmhouse in Burlington, and I'm like, can? Like you're gonna give me a beer in a can? And they put it in front of me, and I'm like, really? And I opened it up, and then I smelled it, and I'm like, what? And then took a sip, and I'm like, that's it, instantly.
I love how on the can they say drink from the can. It's like, what? Aren't you supposed to pour in and go? No, drink it from the can.
But the first time, it was like, what is this? Like, what are you doing? This is a recipe for disaster. And lo and behold, like, you kicked off a revolution. Like, try to find a craft beer in a bottle now. Like, it's a no-no. Possible, right?
Isn't it crazy how much has changed?
It is.
It's pretty awesome.
And so quickly, really, if you think about it.
And Vermont's definitely been a huge beneficiary of that. Just the amount of unreal breweries that are up there. It's just, We've done the tour, we've gone around, and it's unreal that one small state can produce so much amazing beer.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of fickle weather, right? If you get up, this is take a page from our book for this year. If you quarantine, you go on your trip and the weather doesn't quite cooperate, there's plenty of breweries and Mad Taco and really cool places to see and eat, like a lot of stuff to go enjoy.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. This is a very tourism friendly state to begin with, and even if you're not a skier, there are plenty of things to do. And the funny thing with the craft beer, the beer tourism explosion is the degree to which it has driven mountain biking here. Like, I don't know if you guys mountain bike too, but
Yeah,
a lot of people who used to ski and fell in love with the beer then saw like, oh, the brew fest and everything is during the summer. Like, we could also try mountain biking, you know, and the ski areas are more and more of them are offering mountain biking. And suddenly they got hooked on that too. And it was like, now we have like 3 reasons to come up to Vermont, you know, and
stay outdoor all the time.
Right, not just in the winter, but now in the summertime, we can come up, we can hit the brew fest, you know, we can fill the trunk of our car up with beer, and then we can go mountain biking, and then we can go home, you know.
And there's always the holy grail, go to Hill Farmstead, right?
Oh, yeah, if you can find it. And and the road
on the map.
That's like the crown jewel.
And we saw a car in a ditch there. We were driving up, and it was right. They closed at 4. It was like 3:30. We're like, "There's people in a ditch. We should help them." Oh, we got to get there before the place closes.
We'll be back in 15 minutes. We'll help them later. Like,
the wolves didn't get them. They were fine.
During mud season, when you drive up there, yeah, exactly. You see the cars that are stuck, and you're like, "Should I help them or not?" And it's like, maybe on the way out. If they're still here on the way out, maybe I'll stop.
Exactly. All right, so we've been doing this for 35 minutes. This has been a great conversation. Don't want to take too much more of your time, Adam. But what could you see as a successful ski season? Like, what are things that you know make you optimistic and that you think will lead to a successful season?
Everyone just has to do their part. Like, that's really, really important. I think in the past, this industry has evolved to such a level where in the past it was just really easy, as I said before, to impromptu throw your gear in the car, come up and go skiing. And the experience was kind of tailor-made for spontaneity and let's just go and get on the mountain and do what we love, right? But now it's like, it's a team effort from the very beginning. Like, we've all got a part to play and we've got to do it. We have no choice anymore with what to do. So what is success? Success is having a season. Success is having a full season, a season that is not amended like last season's was. Success is people adhering to the regulations and the skiers working together to create a safe environment such that we don't have outbreaks, we don't have incidents. You know, we are able to stay as healthy as possible and enjoy the sport as much as possible. Because the reality is, and I keep saying this, once we get on snow, like once you get off the lift and and there's snow under your skis, nothing has changed. Like, that's the same. That's when all that other stuff just disappears. Mm-hmm. So you've just got to do what you got to do to get from where you're sitting now to that point in time. And it's a process, and it is what it is, you know, and it's worth it. I keep saying this, but you guys know this as well as I do. Like, if I was trying to sell a product that I didn't believe in right now and tell you that you had to do all this stuff in order to get it, you'd be able to see that, right? But I hope you can also tell, you know how much I love this. It is worth it. Like, there's nothing like it. So if you want to get
another way to earn your turns, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like
hike with a mountain, but now you got to follow all this other protocol. It's part of earning it, right?
Yeah, I guess if the backcountry people weren't so like clingy to that term, I could have used earning your turns. That's a pretty good idea, because we will all be earning our turns this year.
Yeah. Sorry. So too, one thing that you mentioned, I think on that Ski Vermont call that you had a few weeks ago, is that Nordic skiing is looking to have a big bump this year, right? Are you guys predicting like 20 to 40% increase?
Yeah, Reese Brown from the Cross Country Ski Areas Association has said they're looking at a 20 to 40% participation increase based on like equipment sales, like preseason equipment sales and inquiries to the ski areas and things of that nature. And if you think about it, it does make sense. I don't know if you guys know anybody who's a serious cross country skier, but they don't even go on the lodge, half of them. Like, they pull up, they put their skis on at the car, and they're gone. Like, a lot of them are like very fitness oriented people who are like very serious about like, I'm going to go do a 5K loop and like I'm timing myself and I got the watch that gives you all the data and all this stuff. Like,
they're like Green Berets. They disappear into the woods. You don't see them until the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, where were you? Like, you know,
motoring along. Yeah. And I'm full disclosure, like, I'm very much plugged into that culture because my wife grew up at a cross country ski area. Her parents owned and operated Prospect down in Woodford, in between Bennington and Brattleboro for her whole life. Up until a few years ago, they sold it. But so I married a lifelong cross country skier who has then been like, we're going out and we're going skiing. So I do a lot of cross country, and it's just phenomenal. Like the the solitude, the quiet of the woods, and like just the beautiful scenery, and the fact that you do get such a great workout. It again checks a lot of those boxes for the outdoor recreation that people are looking to engage in. And because of the nature of it, again, it can be a little more minimalistic. You don't have to have, you don't have to ride lifts. You don't have to navigate some of these other these logistic things that you do with Alpine. So it does make sense that there will be a bump in cross country. Plus, if there's a reservation system in place and maybe it's a little more difficult to go and get one of those reservation slots on a weekend or during a holiday week or whatever, and instead you can go cross country skiing where there's a little more room, then maybe that's a nice viable substitute, or plan B for your family.
Also, too, financially, it's a lot easier to get into. You're not dumping, big money for a season pass or expensive gear. Gears obviously cost some money, but it's a little more easy financially to get into the sport.
Yeah, it can be for sure. I think the overhead at cross country ski areas is lower than the overhead at alpine areas, and that does translate a little bit into the participant cost as well. And so you can see that as being, something that can be a little bit more affordable for sure.
Plus, you're burning more calories and can have more beer.
There you go.
That's true. Although beer and cross country skiing don't necessarily mix very well. It's not like alpine where
and then beer.
Maybe the guy's got like a 4-pack of Heady in his backpack and he's sharing it with his buddies, and you're continuing to ski. Like, you start doing that in cross country, you could be in trouble pretty
Well, it's almost like it's the carrot you're dangling in front of yourself. You're like, if I go a couple more kilometers, I can have that beer.
That's true. That's
getting
true.
colder as you go.
That does bring up another point that's good that I should make, and that is about après, because we do get a lot of questions about like, what does après even mean this year? And quite honestly, like, we're going to have to suspend our traditional approach and attitude toward après for this season, and that's a tough thing for me to even say and think about. But the reality is, we can't go into bars and like we used to, or pubs, or whatever. It's just not. The option is not there anymore, and you can't congregate in the parking lot and pass around the bottle of tequila or whatever. Like, we're going to have to change that whole mode of thinking, and it's going to have to be like, go back to your hotel, go back to your condo or your Airbnb or whatever it is, and make your drink there and do what you can do. And we're actually working on some virtual après projects that are pretty exciting. Having some social media live streams and things like that people can tune into, so to kind of unite everybody. And if we do have to be distanced in our own place doing our thing, maybe we can all kind of join together that way. So that's been one of the things that's been a little bit of a challenge that we've been thinking about a lot, is because après is such a beloved part of skiing, and so we want to try to figure out a way to have some substitute for it. But it's important to say, we got to change some of these ways of thinking about our expectations for what we can do.
I think it's important to call out too, like, you're probably going to have to, they're probably going to have to police the parking lots, right? Because you're not going to allow people to congregate. I've been to football stadiums recently where they're like, you can't do anything in the parking lot. You can't even put a chair out and hang out and wait for people. Like, no, you just get out of your car, you go in, you get back to your car, and you leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. You're sitting in the parking lot. If you allowed people to sit in the parking lot and do what they used to do, right? They're going to be eating and they're going to be drinking, which means they're not going to be masked up. Right. It's not fair to the person who's parked in the same row next to you that has to then walk by with their family while you're sitting there unmasked. And like, again, let's think about this idea, but we're all in this together. Like, it's not just about you. And I know I don't have COVID, and I know my buddies don't have COVID, so it doesn't make a difference. We can sit here and we can have, do our thing. But again, that guy and the family that's walking by with their kids or whatever, and they've got to walk by you and everybody's unmasked. It's not safe, and it's inconsiderate, and it kind of goes against that attitude of, let's all work together here to make sure that we have a season and that we can continue to have a season once it starts. So it is going to take some degree of sacrifice there. And I really hope that people recognize that and understand that this is not about not wanting people to have fun. It couldn't be further from the truth. Like, it's about, we want to do what we need to do in order to have this season even happen and for it to be as safe as possible. So I think people hopefully understand that.
Yeah, I think most people just want a season. And
Right.
like we said before, after having last season cut short and the crazy summer and fall we've all had, we just want to have a season. So, yes, for sure. So if people want more information and to stay updated, where can they go for all the info?
Well, skivermont.com. The very first thing you will see when you go to skivermont.com is a page on COVID and travel planning. It's the very first thing that comes up in the carousel. It's the very first item underneath the carousel. There's a 6 pane there, and it's I've tried very hard to make this a succinct kind of one stop for all the information that you need. It has links to all of the state sites so that you can get the most up-to-date information on the protocols and things like that. But also it has all the links beneath that to the individual ski areas, because I can't stress this enough. It's not important what you know or what you think you know about, oh, I've heard that Stowe's doing this, or I've heard that, Jay Peak is doing this. Before you do anything else, you need to check in for the latest information from each ski area, because as I pointed out earlier, this whole situation has continued to change throughout.
Very fluid, yeah.
Change has been the only constant, in fact. So literally day to day, some of those policies could change. And so check before you start to plan, check while you're planning, and then check again before you get in the car after you've completed your quarantine and all that. Check again before you get in the car to come, and just make sure that something hasn't changed that you're not aware of, that kind of a thing. Know before you go. I know it's a cliche, but it's very, very important this year.
Yeah. And again, you follow the rules, you follow the protocols, you can have a great ski season too. So
no doubt
stay informed. Information's the key right now.
Exactly. Empower yourself with information.
Very cool.
Perfect way to end the episode.
That's why anybody tunes into the Ski Bum podcast anyway, is to empower themselves with information. So
that's what we try to do.
Again, right?
Well, Adam, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Everyone go to skivermont.com for all the latest info, and hopefully we'll get a chance to make some turns this year.
Yeah, man. Let me know. Let me know when you have completed your self-quarantine. I will welcome you with open elbow bump at that point, and we can get out there and go skiing.
Awesome.
Cool.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
All right. Thanks so much, Adam.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You too.